My great-grandfather's father got on a ship and he went to South Africa and he came to Cape Town and they settled there and they started, and there was nothing. If anyone says to you the land was stolen, it's a dead lie. The slogan was, "We will kill the innocent and flee from the strong." The ANC is basically using a man by the name of Julius Malema to do that rubbish work for them.
Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer. Brr, pa, pa. Brr, pa, pa.
There's a big area further up north from Pretoria called Pietersburg. It's now called Polokwane. There is over 3,500 crosses there of farmers that was murdered. The farms are far away from each other, so if there's an ambush and an attack, you don't have time. My name is Leon Poolman. I am from Pretoria, South Africa. I always laugh at Pretoria because that was where Elon Musk is born, so then everybody knows where Pretoria is. We are starting the 235 movement for self-determination. And that's what we spoke about, the small communities ruling themselves. And that is the most effective. I saw that in Switzerland. Switzerland is a perfect example of how to do it. So I think that is the idea. And we will take it from there, and we're going to divide South Africa hopefully into a lot of small areas where white people will become the majority and rule themselves. Okay. That's the plan.
Right now we are here in St. Petersburg, Russia, with our friend Leon Poolman from South Africa, Pretoria. We are really pleased that you took your time to meet with us, and it's a great pleasure for us to ask you some questions, to give us some insight. What is the life of the Boer people living in South Africa? Because in Europe we have only a small amount of information, and probably those information sometimes they are fake. We don't know what exactly is going on in South Africa. So thank you for taking your time and talk with us.
Thank you.
First of all, I would like to ask you to just give us a brief history. How did the Boer people ended in South Africa?
Okay, that's a nice question. But I'm going to ask you also, give me a second. I just want to say thank you very much for this. And also, it is such a pleasure to meet the Hungarian people. Really, you're friendly. The whole group was friendly. So, and thank you for taking me in. And I want to be in Hungary soon. Yes, the question about South Africa, how did the Boer get there? So, I'm not going to have the exact dates, but in the 1630, somewhere around there, it can be early, I'm not too sure. But Bartolomeu Dias was a Portuguese tradesman who was sent around the Cape route. He went there, and they actually got in Mossel Bay a little cross which he put up on the beach to say that I was here. So this is one thing I can say about Europeans. Doesn't matter where they go. If they go to Africa or if they go to the moon, they will say, I've been here. Okay, so that's the first thing we have to understand. Then Jan van Riebeeck went there, and he had ships that got there. You can Google everything, of course, if you want deep history and the exact dates. So, and what they did is they encountered the Bushman people, which is the indigenous people of southern Africa. Now, I was also right up into Namibia where I saw on stones markings of the Bushman people. There's also markings in caves. So to be honest, the Khoisan, which we call them today, they were the first people in South Africa. And as the Boere started moving from the Cape into the interior with the track, the Boer tracker, there were 4, I think, groups that moved into. The ones went to the Andries Pretorius track, which was that big battle of 16 December. He fought that one. And then there was other Louis Trichardt track, and then there was a Dorsland trackers, which went up Namibia way through the desert of deserts. And they went and they got to the other side, and they came back and they died. And then you got the Louis Trichardt track that went through the interior, basically, up north, and then they turned and went to Mozambique, where Bartolomeu Dias them also were, starting a Portuguese colony. And they actually died, those people, many of them of malaria. So it is a very difficult thing to say who was first there, because even from the northern side you will encounter those type of things, and you will definitely die of malaria. But that's a little bit of a history, and I'm going to do personal thing of my own family. So my great-grandfather's father, he stayed in the southeastern portion of England, and he got on a ship and he went to South Africa, and he came to Cape Town. And he stayed there for a while, and he said, well, it's not too bad here. And he wrote a letter to his brother on another ship going back, and said to his brother, yes, you must come to Cape Town. It's not too bad here. So when the brother got there, they decided the one brother is going to stay in Cape Town, the other one, my great-grandfather, was going to move to a small town called Philippolis in the Northern Cape. It's right up north. So what he did was he got there to this little office, and he said, can I have a piece of land? And the magistrate said to him, yes, yes, there, far there's a piece of land. If you want, you can live there or you can die there. It's up to you. There's nothing, but you can see if you can do something. So he had this ability to walk with a stick, and the stick will point down and say there's water. So he got the water, and he dug the water with a well with sticks, and they found the water. Now I saw that well with my own eyes, and I saw the vein underneath. It's quite thick. So then he started with catching with snares. They catch the rabbits, and they catch some of the buck, and then they sold the skins for seeds, and that's how he started his little farm. And then he bought a few sheep, and then also the boerbokke, you know, the goats. So, and that's how they started. And they settled there, and they started, and there was nothing. So I just want to say, if anyone says to you that the land was stolen, which you will find, it's a lie. It's a dead lie. I also say, who does the moon belong to? Does it belong to the Armstrong family? Does it belong to America? Or does it belong to humanity? So because the Armstrong family was there first, so they can claim. It doesn't work like that. And also, I told you about Bartolomeu Dias that went around and put a cross. Now I just want to say, to get it out, that the black people, there was no stones. There was no 2 stones, 3 stones, no huts that you can see, no bridges, no churches, nothing. On the whole of South. The Boere, when they get to a place, they put up a church. It's the way it is. You understand the Protestant thing. We do it like that. You know, we praise and honor our Father first, and then we start with our things. So that's a long question on this. A short question, long answer.
But it is important because in the mainstream media, they, as you mentioned, they usually use this kind of agenda that, yeah, the evil white man took their precious land, and as you said, it was practically an unfertile land.
Totally.
And the Boer people made it fertile.
Yes.
They dig out what was
Yeah.
in the soil.
Yes.
The history of the Boer people, it was not only about fighting some African tribes, but it was heavily affected with fighting with the British people.
Very.
Especially, a lot of people don't know that the concentration camp,
Yup.
as a term,
Yes.
it was invented by the British people, and unfortunately, it was invented against the Boer people.
Yes.
Can you tell us some quick insight about the fights with the British people?
Yes, I'm trying to keep it short, but what has happened is there were the Boer people, which we call the Boere, and they were the people that went into the interior and started farms. But then diamonds were found in the Kimberley area, you know that big hole? There was diamonds. So we all say that there was a diamond rush from Europe because there was millions to be found and to be made there. But these were different kind of people. They were not there because of religious reasons. They were there for money reasons. And then also in the northern part, in Johannesburg area, we call it the Witwatersrand, the White Waters edge, where the rivers were flowing, there was lots and lots and lots of gold. So you can imagine Her Majesty hears, oh, there's diamonds and gold in South Africa. So send in the troops. This place must become ours. So the people that came there with the diamonds and the gold, they only had one thing in mind, and that is to make money and get rich. But it affected the Boere, because the Boere said, no, well, you know what, we've been working this land for so long, and it's 1890, around about there, and now you just want to come and take the land, and you just want to take the mineral resources and give us nothing, and give everything to, that's not fair. Let's talk about it. If you don't want to talk about it, let's shoot about it. You know, then we're going to do it like that. And the one thing about the Boer, he's been shooting his whole life. And so it's a difficult enemy if you want to fight a Boer. So, but nevertheless, we've got lots of places where we had big wars going on. But mostly because of the Boer way of life, we could blend in, and guerrilla warfare was actually the first people that applied guerrilla warfare was the Boer. I don't know if you know that. They could just disappear in the veld, and they would kill them, they would shoot, and they were very good at that. And then there was this Amayuba fighting where we really nearly destroyed the British Kingdom with a handful of Boere. But the other guys were still busy digging gold and diamonds, if you understand what I'm saying. So there was roots already in this thing. And I know there's some liberal writers and liberal people now, they want to include as much as black people as they can. They get drawings, I don't know, some of the drawings they most probably did the other day. But they want to include the black people and say that they were there first because it's a narrative they have to support, which is not really so. But also the concentration camps you mentioned, if you go to Bloemfontein, it's in the center of South Africa, you will find my great-grandmothers and her boy died in the concentration camp. You know, so, but those were Boer people that had farms and had houses that the British burned with a scorched earth policy. So we fought for the country with our lives, you know. I'm going to say something very terrible, but there's a little song that we sing in South Africa called Simbamba. Now, I will try and sing, but if it doesn't work, don't worry. It goes Simbamba, Mama Sababa, Simbamba, Mama Sababa. Draai sy nek om, gooi hom in die sloot, trap op sy kop en dan is hy dood. Now, Simbamba is a word for sleep peacefully, my baby. Sleep peacefully, my baby. I will break your neck and I will throw you in the ditch and I will stand on your head till you're dead. It's the song that the mothers sang for the children. Now, I want you to try and imagine those babies were all made by raping the white ladies, by the English soldiers. So if you start going there, now you're going very deep. And now you can understand that the Boere has got something to fight for. And that is something that the world must understand. And, you know, and this is going to be very serious very soon, I think, that we might be going there to a civil war. I hope not. I cannot see in the future. But as the way things going now, it's a problem.
After centuries of struggling and wars, the Boer people succeeded to build such a thriving country as South Africa. It was during the apartheid system, which was sort of a Switzerland of the whole continent,
yes,
the African continent. But unfortunately, due some evil forces, some external evil forces, it was pushed to the limit and it was forced to end this thriving system, which was the apartheid system. Can you give us some insight that who were these forces and how did they succeed to destroy this beautiful country?
There's always money to be made. We understand that as a humanity. There where you can make money, you will stand on someone else if it's the story. If you've got a very low human heart, if you don't have a moral compass, if it's money that's driving you, you will make sure that there will be wars, and you will fund both sides of the war. So you'll win. It doesn't matter who wins. But those are the cannon feeder. You'll just feed them to the cannons. And this is the thing, you know, so the evil forces are always there. It is up to us to identify those forces. And in South Africa, we had a man by the name of Cecil John Rhodes, which was the English guy from England that got funded with a lot of money. And he actually, Rhodesia was called after him. But there was also diamonds to be found. So there where there is minerals, Ukraine, same story. It never changes. It's always the same thing. There's a few people that's going to make a lot of money. Gold fields in South Africa, diamond fields in South Africa. We've got the iron fields also. My great-grandfather, that farmer, it is actually ruined now because they're extracting iron ore, selling it to China today. You know, so this is the thing. Who understands that? And then you get in South Africa, you also get people that work with that. And they are the richest people that you can find in South Africa most of the time. They got the money, they got the support, they got government behind them, they got the church even behind them. The church has gone off the rails. You know, so people are leaving the church in South Africa and they're not going to churches anymore because the ministers were all also captured. If you can say that, you know, the preachers, they said to us in South Africa, oh, apartheid is so wrong, it is against the will of God, and they forget that the Springbok and the impala are both the same sort of animal, but they don't marry. They keep themselves separate. And that is a beauty of nature. The pine tree doesn't marry the oak tree and become some other whatever. So the idea is to have a grey nation, a grey world, where they are the pharaohs and the rest are the plebs, and we are the laborers and the slaves. And in South Africa, there's nowhere on the planet where you find that concept more exact than in South Africa. So you got the rich, the middle class is disappearing, and you got the poor people. And the poor people are slaves, tax slaves. So the black people don't want white people. They will see that this Malema, they want us all to leave and go to America on the refugee program that Donald Trump has given us. But they want the money. And here is something that you in Europe must understand. I've been all over Europe, and the story is the same. When you go into Germany, as an example, I'm using that because I've now seen that, and you go there 8 o'clock at night, the shops are closed, but the Iraq guy, his shop is open till 11, and the foreigners, their shops are open. So labor, which is the reason, the legitimate reason to bring in foreigners, we need them to do the work. It's a trap, because you get one in, and then the wife comes, and then the children comes, then the grandmother comes, and then the family, then the cousin comes. So sooner or later you will be flooded, and you can do nothing about that, because you see the European heart is a heart of compassion. It's a heart of let us give, let us help. But yes, it can be detrimental. Now in South Africa, we had the white people, that was about, say, 8 million. And what we did was we had basically the same mindset. Let's help the black people. So what we did, my father them gave each tribe a homeland. And we funded this whole homeland with roads, hospitals, parliament buildings, police force, army, everything, for free. They got it for free. They never paid for that. The whole area was for free. So it's still there today. But the one thing they did not do, the black governments, they never gave them deed of transfer. So if the chief says, yeah, well, that's your piece of land, that's your piece of land, you can, as long as you can stay there, but the banks will not give you a loan to build a house on it. You understand? So it's a place where there are millions of people living now, and there's no deed of transfer. So there's no progress, because the concept of a socialist and a communist, they don't. The top must to own everything, and these people own nothing. But you'll be happy. You heard that one before, you see. So, and that's the story. So at this moment in time, we get a very rich white people that is benefiting from the system, and they will do everything to keep the system as it is. But the majority of people are suffering. And we also let in more than 30 million foreign workers, foreigners. They're living off our hospitals, our benefits, and now there's nothing left. And that's a problem. And in 20 years, if you don't do it right in Europe, I'm telling you, it's going to be the same. So look at South Africa as an example of what and how it's going to play out for your countries. This is the message I've got for Europe.
You mentioned this communist idea of economy. Yeah. can you tell us a little bit about Nelson Mandela? Because in the mainstream media, in the European media, and also in the schools, during the history lessons, they teach to the kids and teach to the people that he was a honorable person, a freedom fighter whose goal was to free the oppressed African people living in South Africa. Who was Nelson Mandela in fact?
It's such a serious question because I'm going to give it to you from my perspective as a white person. But if you speak to a black person, you will have a different answer. Okay. But the true facts, you can actually read. He was actually a terrorist. Margaret Thatcher said that. He's a terrorist. ANC is a terrorist organization. The slogan was, we will kill the innocent and flee from the strong. How's that? It's in the ANC's documents. You can still read it today. We will kill the innocent and flee from the strong. Now, I was in the army. I was one of the strong people. They will never confront us, but they will kill the innocent people. So if that's your freedom, if that is a freedom fighter, if that makes your heart feel good, and you see this is a man to worship basically, I don't know, it's not me, sorry. It's not how I think about it. I will help the innocent and I will take away the strong if I can. You know, that is what and Europeans will do that. But there had to be a poster boy, poster person for the narrative of the socialist system that was implemented. What is happening at the moment is they are I would say the one world system elites or whatever. I don't want to call them elites because they are not elites. They just, but they are pressuring South Africa so hard to see how far they can pressure humanity before there's an explosion. And that's what's happening. Now, if you think about the white people in South Africa, we've been pressurized so badly. They've even got the 144 racist laws against us. Now, let's say we had a few racist laws. You could not marry across the white man could not marry a black woman, a black man could not marry. That was one of the laws. Also, there was another law that certain jobs, especially in the artisans, were reserved for white people only. Now, people say it's a very wrong law. It's not right. And in a way, I agree. But when you're an artisan and you look at what we saw in St. Petersburg, the columns that was made, and there's a lot of responsibility that comes with being an artisan. You know, you have to do it perfectly. But in the African mindset, that is not something that is very important. You know, if I break it or chip it, don't worry, you know. And the responsibility isn't there. That's the reason for that. Now, I said that the white man or white woman could not marry a black person. And there's a reason for that. If you go to Cape Town today, you will find there in the Cape Flats, there's a lot of colored people. And my heart goes out to most of them, because here's the problem. When it was the white government, they were not white enough to be taken into government. Now there's a black government, and they're not black enough to go into the black government. And it's a difficult thing where they find themselves at. You know, so, and this is the thing. They have actually become a community on their own. And that's why this movement we're starting is where we're saying, listen, every community must have their own rulers. They must look after themselves. we call it self-beskikking, self-preservation, self-rule. That's the idea. You know what we talk about, the small groups, small communities, they look after them. Let's leave the big politics because they don't get to that. Yeah.
After the fall of the apartheid system, the Boer people lost their ability to control what is going on in their country, and the black people gained the power. How did it affect the everyday life of the Boer people? What is it to be a Boer people, a Boer man living in South Africa right now after decades of falling of the apartheid system?
Yes. So there is two groups. You remember I said to you about the diamond people and the gold people, and the ones that were broederbonders. You know, the people that look after themselves. It is something like the Freemasons that we had in South Africa. They had an advantage. I was not one of them, so I do understand that. When I go to the bank as a normal white person in apartheid era, I would not get a loan. But if you're a broederbonder, you will get a loan. Now, those people are still benefiting. Their children are benefiting. Their children are mostly this progressive liberal people. Oh, we own them, we owe them, I understand that because they have never worked with them. But the majority of white people lost their jobs. They had a job today and tomorrow they don't have a job. And my brother had to train black people to do his job. Once they could do that, he didn't have a job anymore. So one of two things happen. You either start your own business or you become poorer. And there's a lot of the people that became poorer and poorer and poorer. And the rest that's left over gets taxed. So you're nothing but a tax slave to the government. And the majority, like I say, of white people today are poor. They've really went backwards. You can say, yes, they didn't take the opportunities. You can make any excuse. But this is life, So it's not. I'm a farmer. I stay outside of Pretoria on a small holding where I have some of my friends' cattle there, and we do a little bit of cattle farming, and he's mostly in control of that. My grandfather was a farmer with goats and sheep. So we grew up on farms. Everybody of us, we understand farming. So. But today, to be a farmer in South Africa is the most dangerous job on the planet. It's extremely dangerous. I've got 28 cameras around my property. And I've got 13 off-site cameras that's monitored 24 hours a day on my property. So that I'm not ambushed. I live behind bars. At night when the sun goes down, you have to lock up, dogs out, cameras on, alarms on. So it is a dangerous place at the moment. It's so sad. I have to say to some of my Hungarian friends, don't come and visit now, but maybe in a few years' time, but don't come now. So because it's just too dangerous. It's too dangerous, and yes, people are poorer. We've got potholes as big as dams in the roads. We have a thing called load shedding. Now, I've been in Europe and I've seen the doors. Many of the doors, they look like safes. With those pegs that go into the side, all working with electricity. In South Africa, not one of those doors can work because we have load shedding. Then you've got electricity, then you don't have for gaps. And so, you know what I'm saying? So, and now they want to take our guns away. Can you believe that? So, we're 60 million black people, of which 30% are youth that's not employed, that's hungry. You will not be safe.
And I guess the police is not protecting you at all. You can't count on them.
No. I'm a police reservist. I used to work with the police. I love some of the police people. There are some very, very good policemen. But yes, there's no petrol for the vehicles. When you go to the office and you go on duty, there is no bullets in the safes. Yes. Yeah, no. The police is not going to do that. You know, the army has disappeared where the barracks were. The masses are moving into the army barracks and the army places. So there's no more army. So there's no more police. So all that's left is yourself. You have to stick together.
And how common is in everyday life that Boer farmers are getting attacked, ambushed? Because we can hear some news that the ANC is always propagating to attack Boer people. Yes. for their followers.
The ANC is basically using a man by the name of Julius Malema to do that rubbish work for them. Then you cannot blame the ANC. You blame them, the EFF, which is a baby ANC, basically. They're doing the dirty work and they are killing and they are inciting violence. But it's a fact. There's a big area close to, further up north from Pretoria called Pietersburg. It's now called Polokwane, where you find the white crosses, which you saw in Trump has got the video of the road, but there is over 3,500 crosses there of farmers that was murdered. And it's very brutal. It is very bad. You know, the farms are far away from each other. So if there's an ambush and an attack, you don't have time to phone someone. Someone's not going to come and help you. You're on your own. So there's this new law saying expropriation with nil compensation. So that means they can take anything you want. But a farm murder is nothing but that. If they murder the farmer, the family will move away from the farm. And that farm will become vacant. Either the government will take it, or you get this rich farmers that will buy that for nothing and expand their own properties. I remember I said there's people that still benefit from the system. Those big mega farmers, we call them mega farmers. Not saying all of them, many of them will do that. So the expropriation without compensation will work like that. Same with my property. If I'm murdered, it will sell today for not even 50% of what I paid for it in real value. So someone will buy it, most probably a doctor or a lawyer, and then leave it for a while, and then maybe they will expand and build there in future and make a lot of money.
So that's why now they want to bring this new law about the government to be able to take any properties if they mark it as needed for the government without any compensation.
Yes.
So it will mean they can take all of the lands from the Boer people.
They can take all the land. They can take your money in your bank account. They can take your toothbrush. If it is for the benefit of this guy, which is a black person, you can do it. But I just want to say something, and this is where we come in. The government is busy with this, but there is so many corrupt politicians that's stealing from everything, and they've got billions. So what we need to do is we have to change government, and we use that same law against them. That's what I'm thinking. You know, the same.
In the past, Terre Blanche was a very charismatic leader of the Boer people in South Africa. Unfortunately, he was killed on his own farm. And I guess nowadays the AVB is not so active anymore. In what organization or in what person you see the future or the possibility for the future of the Boer people to to be safe in South Africa and make it as a thriving country again?
I really did not see one leader. I cannot see one leader taking. You remember last night we sang the song Della Rey, Della Rey? You remember that?
Yeah.
That is saying that where is the new leader that we will have? But I don't think that's going to happen. That's why we started this 235 movement, where we're saying the power has to go back to the community at ground level. And they must look after themselves and they must rule themselves. The Khoisan, we spoke about the Khoisan. Do you know that of the tribes that got their homelands, the Khoisan never got their homeland? They must get their homeland. That is what we're fighting for. For every tribe, if they want. The Zulus got in Goyama Trust. It's a trust, it's a big land for them only. But let them have it, it's fine. But let us white people that want it also have that. But are we going to have a leader? I don't think so. Not now. Not now. Because we've got a lot of infighting and we've got, you know, this guilt that was put upon the white people. And they're constantly bombarded with, yeah, you stole the land. Yes, you are a racist. And the people are tired. They are so tired and they don't trust anybody anymore. So that's why I'm saying, if the leaders come up, quickly they go down again. You know, they just run away. So this is why we say, we will give the opportunity, we will put it out there, take it or leave it. It's up to you. And if you don't take it, you're going to lose everything. I don't know if you're going to lose your life, it can be. But that's the story.
And in the end of the interview, what advice would you tell it to Hungarian people
Yes.
or European people from your experience in South Africa?
I just touched on that already. Please look at South Africa to see exactly where you are going. If you've got this influx of people from all over the world, look at South Africa, that is where you're going. You're going to end up exactly there. So if I could give advice, I think go the Donald Trump route, close the borders. We need people, qualified people that's got a heart for your country. If he's a Protestant or if he can slot in with you, and you can give him opportunity, and he says, I'm going to leave behind my religion, I'm going to leave behind my philosophy, I'm going to embrace the European philosophy, and I'm going to support, and I'm going to build. I'm going to build. I would say that. I don't know if you're going to get too much of that, because, you know, you have to give, and you have to give, and you have to give, and you have to give. It's like a teenager. You always have to give. But look at South Africa, it's an example for the world. That is where you're going, open borders. It's not a good idea. And I think the elites know that. That's why they're doing that. Because they need to get the people of the planet down. Population must come down. So if they don't jab them to death, they'll most probably, yes.
Why did you find it important to participate in the conference which was held yesterday here in St. Petersburg?
I believe, to be honest, when I started my pilgrimage, you can say, through Europe, I know about Francois because we actually want him to become our poster man. But I thought of not coming to the conference, but Francois said I must think about that. So somewhere I said to myself, you know what, I must come here. And I don't really know why. But when I sat in that conference yesterday and I listened to those first 3 or 4 people, I knew exactly why I had to be here. The globalists has got this power and we are the opposite power. And this thing will have to turn with time. Otherwise, we're going to have the pharaohs and the slaves. So we have to balance it out. It's the right thing for the counterbalance, and it will grow. It will grow, and sooner or later next year, I think I might come here, but I will come via Hungary.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll
Definitely,
come,
definitely.
for sure. I'll come by you guys.
Yeah, you're welcome in Hungary.
Yeah.
Just let us know, and we will guide you through Hungary.
And when you come to, if you could just come, I will. By all means, I will be there for you guys too. Yeah, you're very nice people.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Ha tetszett a videó, iratkozz fel csatornánkra, és segítsd áttörni a cenzúra falait egy megosztással. Ha egyetértesz céljainkkal és anyagilag szeretnéd támogatni a HVM harcát és tevékenységét, többek között a normalitás melletti kiállásainkat, az eljárási költségeink fedezését, médiatevékenységünket, a Duogládi folyóirat kiadását, gyermek- és ifjúsági táborainkat, az Azonosságtudat Alapítványon keresztül megteheted. A számlaszámot megtalálod a leírásban vagy a hvm.hu/támogatás weboldalon.